The power goes out on a Tuesday. Not in a movie, not in a simulation. On your Tuesday, the one where your phone has 43% battery, your gas tank sits at a quarter full, and your kids are already asking what's for dinner. The news, whatever fragments of it still transmit, is either silent or incomprehensible, and a highway stretching out past your neighborhood looks less like an escape route and more like a river of red brake lights that stopped moving 2 hours ago. And you are standing in your driveway, looking at your car, the thing you have driven to work, to the grocery store, to your kid's school for the last 6 years, and you are thinking, this is what saves us. This machine, this ordinary payment plan, still needs an oil change machine. And you would be right. Except for one catastrophic problem that almost nobody in the preparedness world will say directly to your face. That car, exactly as it sits in that driveway right now, will fail your family within the first 6 hours of a real grid-down collapse. Not might fail. Not could fail under certain conditions. Will fail. And the reason 90% of people never see it coming is because they spent their preparation budget on a bug-out bag and convinced themselves the vehicle was just the thing the bag rides in. A bag doesn't have a fuel range. A bag doesn't break down on the side of a corridor road with no cell service and no passing traffic willing to stop. A bag doesn't overheat, doesn't blow a tire, doesn't lose navigation when every cell tower within 40 miles has been compromised or overwhelmed. Your vehicle is not a container for your survival supplies. It is your survival system. The distinction sounds small. It is not small. It is the difference between a family that reaches safety and a family that becomes a statistic in a database nobody is actively maintaining anymore. Consider what happened during Hurricane Katrina in 2005. Approximately 70,000 vehicles were abandoned on Interstate 10 within the first 48 hours. These were not people who forgot to prepare. Many of them had food, water, and supplies. They had plans. They failed at the vehicle level, and once that layer collapsed, every other layer of preparation was rendered completely irrelevant. Supplies you cannot move are just inventory in a location you've already lost. Now extend that logic from a regional storm to a geopolitical crisis, to a scenario involving infrastructure attacks, electromagnetic disruption, or the kind of cascading supply chain collapse that FEMA itself has quietly modeled as a genuine national-level threat. And the arithmetic of vehicle readiness should restructure something fundamental in how you think about preparedness right now. Drop the word ready or unprepared in the comments this instant, before you go another minute without doing it. Because what gets revealed over the next 35 minutes will either confirm that you've already thought about this, or expose a gap in your preparation that could cost your family everything. And the seventh transformation in this blueprint, the one that most channels never address because it doesn't generate affiliate commissions, is a single layer that makes an ordinary vehicle invisible to the kind of attention you absolutely cannot afford to attract in the first 72 hours of a collapse scenario. Stay in this video. That item alone is worth the entire runtime. Here is a foundational mistake that virtually every bug-out vehicle guide on the internet is built on, and it is going to make some people uncomfortable. The guide always starts with vehicle selection. Buy a diesel truck. Get a lifted Jeep. Sell your sedan. The assumption underneath all of that advice is that your current vehicle is the wrong vehicle, and the solution is a purchase. That advice is not only expensive, it is wrong. Catastrophically, dangerously, fundamentally wrong. The United States military does not field vehicles because they are theoretically perfect. They field vehicles that have been made mission-ready through disciplined systems installation. The vehicle type is the last variable that matters. The systems layered into it are the only variables that determine whether it succeeds or fails under operational stress. Your Camry, your Silverado, your Odyssey, your Kia Telluride, all of them can be transformed into a functional, reliable, capable bug-out platform in under 24 hours for less than $300. That is not a sales pitch. That is an engineering reality, and every item in this blueprint is going to prove it. The first transformation layer is operational profile assessment. Most people know their vehicle's fuel economy from the sticker on the window at the dealership. Almost nobody knows their vehicle's actual loaded range under crisis conditions. This distinction is not a footnote. It is the core calculation your entire route plan depends on. The EPA range estimate your vehicle carries assumes standard weight, optimal temperature, and consistent highway speed. Add 3 adults, 60 pounds of gear, irregular stop-and-go traffic, and elevated engine stress, and that range shrinks by 30 to 45%. A vehicle advertised at 400 miles of range is delivering somewhere between 220 and 280 miles under genuine load. If your nearest pre-planned destination is 250 miles out, you just mathematically eliminated your margin for error entirely, before you have even accounted for route detours, roadblocks, or an engine that has not had a full service in 8 months. This is where the preparation gap becomes survival gap, and it is why item 3 in this blueprint, the fuel strategy, is not supplementary information. It is the load-bearing wall of your entire plan. That section will show exactly how to extend your operational range by 60 to 90% using methods that require no mechanical expertise, cost under $40 combined, and can be fully implemented before sunrise tomorrow. But range means nothing if you cannot navigate. And navigation, in a grid-down scenario, is a problem that most people have outsourced entirely to a device that requires infrastructure that will not exist. That problem is next, and it is more dangerous than most people realize, for a reason that has nothing to do with getting lost. Your phone's GPS is not a navigation system. It is a display device for a navigation system that lives on infrastructure you do not own and cannot protect. Most people have never thought about the difference. In normal conditions, it does not matter. In a grid-down environment, it matters completely. The 2003 Northeast blackout, one of the largest infrastructure failures in North American history, knocked out reliable cell communication for 35 million people within 90 minutes of the initial grid failure. That was a single-cause regional event, a coordinated attack on national infrastructure, or a high-altitude electromagnetic pulse of the kind that has been analyzed in military threat assessments since the 1960s, would replicate that effect simultaneously and without the 90-minute warning window. Your vehicle's navigation system, whether it lives in your phone, your dashboard display, or consumer GPS unit, assumes a signal environment that a serious crisis will not provide. The moment that assumption breaks, your $350 Garmin becomes a paperweight, and you are navigating based on whatever you happen to remember about the roads between your home and your destination. The analog navigation layer costs approximately $12 and takes 45 minutes to install. A detailed laminated paper map of every county within a 200-mile radius of your primary location, a waterproof military-style compass. The Sunto A10 is under $15 and is accurate to within 1 degree, and a pre-drawn route card that identifies your primary route, 2 secondary routes, and 3 critical waypoint landmarks that exist regardless of signage or power. You laminate that card, mount it to your sun visor with Velcro strips, and you have just solved a problem that will strand the vast majority of people attempting the same route at the same time as you. That is not a small advantage. That is the difference between moving and not moving when movement is the only option. But the navigation layer assumes something that most people have not verified, that other people in your vehicle, your partner, your teenage kid, whoever is riding with you, can read and use what you have installed. A navigation system that only one person understands is a navigation system with a single point of failure. Every person in that vehicle needs to be able to identify where you are on a physical map using terrain features and compass bearing. That is a 30-minute conversation. Have it before you need to have it under pressure. The military calls this cross-training. In a bug-out vehicle context, it means your navigation layer survives you being incapacitated. Pause here. The first 2 transformation layers are done, operational profile and analog navigation hardening. Most people will stop this video right now because they assume the rest is optional. Those people are wrong, and they will realize that around mile 47 of a route that becomes impassable and requires a real-time decision that their preparation did not equip them to make. Comment still in if you are committed to the full blueprint. Item 4 is a mechanical failure point that ends more bug-out attempts than fuel shortage and navigation failure combined, and it is the most consistently ignored piece of vehicle preparedness content in the entire space. The fuel strategy begins with a concept from military logistics called fuel discipline, and it is the opposite of what most civilians do in a crisis. When people perceive a shortage, the instinct is to fill every available container as quickly as possible and move. That instinct, executed incorrectly, creates an explosive, dangerous, and legally complicated situation inside your vehicle. The correct protocol involves 3-stage fuel redundancy. Stage 1 is a full primary tank, not the half tank you are currently running on, but full tank maintained at all times as a baseline practice. Starting today, the fuel cost of keeping your tank full instead of running it down to a quarter is the same fuel cost. You are just front-loading it. The operational advantage of starting any crisis scenario with a full tank instead of a quarter tank is 80 to 100 miles of additional range before you have touched any supplementary fuel. Stage 2 is 1 to 2 approved portable fuel canisters. The NATO spec metal jerry cans, not plastic, stored in your vehicle's cargo area with a $6 siphon pump and treated with PRIG fuel stabilizer, which extends stored gasoline viability from the standard 60-day window to approximately 24 months. One 5-gallon jerry can add approximately 120 to 150 miles of range to a standard passenger vehicle. 2 cans takes your operational buffer from whatever your tank holds to potentially 450 to 500 miles of total range. Stage 3 is a pre-identified fuel acquisition network. Gas stations along your primary route that have backup generators, rural stations in small towns that are less likely to be overwhelmed in the first surge, and farm supply locations where agricultural diesel can be accessed if your vehicle is compatible. You map all of this now. You do not map it during the event. By the time the event is happening, that information is inaccessible or contested. This is where people make a second critical error. They conflate fuel storage with fuel strategy. Storage is the cans in your trunk. Strategy is the pre-mapped network, the route-specific consumption calculation, the knowledge of exactly how much you need to reach each waypoint on your secondary and tertiary routes. Without the strategy layer, the storage is just weight you are carrying. With it, the storage becomes a force multiplier that extends your effective reach into territory that nobody else has planned for. But fuel range and navigation mean nothing if the vehicle stops moving, and the single most common mechanical failure point in a bug-out scenario is not what most people expect. It is not the engine. It is not the transmission. It is the tires, followed immediately by the cooling system. Both are fixable. Both are ignorable right up until the moment they are not. Item 4 is where those solutions live, and one of them, the cooling system fix, takes 9 minutes and costs less than a fast food meal. But before that, there is something coming at the 11-minute mark of this video that FEMA does not want widely distributed, and it involves a one modification to your vehicle's interior that changes its operational classification entirely. 90% of vehicle breakdowns in emergency evacuation scenarios trace back to one of 4 mechanical failure points: tires, cooling system, battery, and drive belt. Not engine failure, not transmission collapse. The mundane, preventable, completely addressable systems that people ignore because they never cause problems on the drive to work and then detonate under sustained operational stress of a crisis evacuation. Each of these failure points has a solution that fits in your trunk, costs under $30 individually, and requires no mechanical expertise to deploy. The combination of all 4 solutions weighs less than 20 pounds and takes up the space of a small backpack. This is your mechanical redundancy kit, and it is the 3rd transformation layer. The tire layer starts with a 16-ounce Canafixa-flat, which is not the solution. It is the bridge that buys you 7 to 10 miles to reach a surface where you can safely change the tire. The actual solution is a compact spare tire mounted on a steel rim rather than a foam donut spare your vehicle shipped with. The donut spare has a maximum speed rating of 50 miles per hour and a maximum distance rating of 50 miles. In a crisis scenario where you may be driving at highway speeds across 200 miles of unpredictable terrain, a donut spare is not a backup. It is a liability. A full-size spare on a steel rim, sourced from a junkyard or an online salvage marketplace for $20 to $40, eliminates that liability entirely. It mounts in the same location. It installs with the same jack. It gives you a tire that can sustain the full operational demands of your route without imposing speed or distance restrictions. The cooling system layer is simpler and more critical than most people understand. Coolant system failure. Overheat events caused by insufficient coolant, a failed hose, or a compromised thermostat will strand your vehicle as effectively and permanently as an empty fuel tank. 2 liters of premixed coolant in your trunk addresses the top-off scenario. A roll of radiator hose repair tape. The self-fusing silicone type, available for under $6, addresses a minor hose failure and can restore system pressure long enough to reach a safer location. A tube of engine block sealer addresses small internal cracks that generate slow coolant leaks. These 3 items together weigh less than 4 pounds and address the majority of cooling system failures that would otherwise end your journey. The battery layer requires a lithium-ion jump starter, not jumper cables, which require a second functioning vehicle to operate, but a self-contained unit like the Noco Boost Plus GB40, which retails for approximately $100 and can jumpstart a 6-liter gas engine or a 3-liter diesel 30 times on a single charge. In a scenario where other vehicles are either absent, impassable, or occupied by people who are not going to stop to help a stranger, a self-contained jump starter is the difference between a vehicle that starts and one that sits. The drive belt, the serpentine belt, is the final mechanical vulnerability. A failed serpentine belt kills your alternator, your power steering, and your air conditioning simultaneously. A replacement belt for your specific vehicle costs between $15 and $20. The installation requires a socket wrench and a routing diagram, which is printed inside your hood or downloadable from any auto parts website. Carry the belt. Know the routing before you need it. The failure takes 4 minutes to identify and 20 minutes to correct. Without the belt in your trunk, the same failure strands you permanently. This is where something important needs to be said directly. The mechanical redundancy layer is not exciting. It does not feel like preparedness in the dramatic sense that most people associate with survival content. It feels like maintenance. And that is precisely why it is so consistently ignored and why it so consistently ends what should have been successful bug-out attempts. The difference between a vehicle that reaches its destination and one that doesn't is almost never a dramatic, cinematic failure. It is almost always a $40 part that the driver did not think to carry. Comment your answer to this below. If your serpentine belt failed right now on the road 100 miles from your destination, what would you do? Be honest. I reply to the most specific answers. The mobile living system is the fourth transformation layer, and it is the one that shifts your vehicle from a transit vehicle to a sustainable platform. Most people plan for a bug-out journey of 6 to 12 hours. Military planning doctrine accounts for delays of 48 to 72 hours at every stage of any operational movement. In a genuine collapse scenario, the route that should have taken 8 hours will take 24 to 36 because roads will be contested, checkpoints will create delays, and the decision-making required to navigate a genuinely chaotic environment takes more cognitive bandwidth than most people have accounted for. Your vehicle needs to support human life for a minimum of 72 hours without external supply input. That means water, food, warmth, sleep, and sanitation, all addressed, all inside the vehicle, all costing under $100 combined. The water layer is a 4-liter collapsible water reservoir. The Hydropack Seeker is under $25, paired with Sawyer Squeeze Filter, which is a $40 device that removes 99.9999% of bacteria and 99.999% of protozoa from any freshwater source and has a lifetime warranty. The food layer is calorie-dense, no-cook, compact. Mountain House pouches, Cliff Bars, and peanut butter in squeeze tubes. The warmth layer is a tacked bivvy, an emergency reflective bivvy sack that retains 90% of body heat and compresses to the size of a deck of cards. The sleep layer is a foam sleeping pad behind a rear seat, the kind used by backpackers, costing $12, and a sleeping bag rated at 20 degrees. The sanitation layer is a collapsible bucket, a box of biodegradable WAG bags, and a travel-size hand sanitizer. Total weight, under 30 pounds. Total volume, the footwell behind the driver's seat. But the mobile living system creates a problem that almost nobody plans for, and it is the reason item 5, the tactical camouflage and visibility reduction layer, is the most controversial item in this entire blueprint. Because a vehicle loaded with supplies, staged for extended occupation, parked on the side of a road, or at a waypoint in a collapsed environment is not invisible. It is a target. And what comes next is the part that preparedness channels with brand partnerships do not talk about openly, because the solution runs directly counter to the gear-heavy, high-visibility aesthetic that drives their revenue. The vehicle that stands out gets stopped. That is the operational reality of any environment where resources are scarce and authority is fragmented. During the early days of the 2011 Tohoku disaster in Japan, one of the most extensively documented disaster responses in modern history, supply convoys and civilian evacuation vehicles that were visually distinct from the surrounding traffic environment experienced checkpoint delays averaging 40 to 60 minutes longer than vehicles that blended into normal traffic patterns. In an environment where every checkpoint minute is a resource expenditure, fuel burning at idle, time compressing the window before dark, fatigue accumulating in the driver, visual distinction is a liability that has a measurable operational cost. The goal of the tactical camouflage layer is not military-grade concealment. It is visual normalization. The vehicle needs to look like the least interesting thing on the road. This starts with exterior presentation. Roof racks loaded with gear, military pattern decals, visible equipment through rear windows, aftermarket bumpers and light bars. All of these signal resource density to anyone scanning traffic. The correct approach is the opposite. Your loaded vehicle should look, from the outside, like a family that is driving to visit relatives. Cargo moved to the floor of the rear seat. Window coverings that look like standard sunshades. Nothing mounted externally that was not there before the crisis. A standard vehicle in normal condition attracts no attention. A vehicle that looks like a survival platform attracts exactly the kind of attention that in a stress-elevated environment can escalate from a conversation to something significantly more dangerous. The interior layer of tactical camouflage addresses digital signature. Modern vehicles broadcast a persistent Bluetooth and cellular signal through their onboard systems. In a scenario where tracking infrastructure remains partially operational, that signal is a locational marker. The practical solution is a vehicle-specific OBD2 Bluetooth blocker, a device that plugs into your diagnostic port and disables passive signal broadcast without affecting vehicle operation, available for under $25. Combined with turning your phone to airplane mode during movement and using pre-stored offline maps rather than live navigation, you reduce your vehicle's detectable electronic signature to near zero. What I'm about to say next will create disagreement, and the preparedness community has strong opinions about it. But the evidence is clear. The most dangerous thing you can do in a collapsed environment is travel in a group that looks like it is traveling as a group. Convoy movement, multiple vehicles traveling in formation, is one of the highest visibility movement signatures possible. It telegraphs coordination, resources, and destination. If convoy travel is unavoidable, vehicles in a group should travel with 30-second spacing minimum. Use a pre-agreed radio frequency on handheld Balphone UV5, our units rather than cell communication, and avoid synchronized stopping. Hit like right now if you've thought about this problem before and never heard it framed this way. It means you're thinking at the level that matters. The 24-hour integration blueprint is where all 7 transformation layers become a single functional system. The sequence matters. Day 1 begins at hour 0 with the fuel assessment. Tank filled, canisters treated and secured, route consumption calculated. Hours 1 through 3 cover the navigation installation. Maps laminated, compass calibrated, route card mounted, all vehicle occupants given a 30-minute navigation orientation. Hours 3 through 5 cover mechanical redundancy kit. Spare tire swapped. Redundancy kit assembled and positioned in the trunk in the specific order of most likely needed to least likely needed. Hours 5 through 8 cover the mobile living system build-out. Water reservoir filled and filtered. Food layer staged in the driver's side footwell. Thermal layer and sleep system packed behind the rear seat. Hours 8 through 12 cover the exterior normalization and digital camouflage layer. Hours 12 through 24 are reserved for rest, communication verification, and a full systems walkthrough in which every person who will be in that vehicle demonstrates the ability to operate every system independently. That last requirement, independent operation by every occupant, is the piece that separates preparation from actual readiness. A system that only the primary operator can run is not a redundant system. It is a single point of failure with extra equipment attached. In The Walking Dead, in Fallout, in The Last of Us, and in every real-world documented collapse scenario from Katrina to the Bosnian War to the Korean War, the groups that survived longest were not the ones with the most resources. They were the ones with the most cross-trained, internally redundant operational capacity. Every person who climbs into your bug-out vehicle should be able to navigate, start the vehicle without power assistance, operate the communication devices, access the water filtration system, and change a tire. These are not complex skills. Each of them can be taught in under an hour. The cost of not teaching them could be everything. Here's a reality check that every preparedness video should end with, and almost none of them do. This blueprint does not guarantee safety. It improves your odds in a measurable, computable, operationally significant way. But it does not eliminate risk. Nothing does. What it does is shift you from the category of people who were unprepared for something that was predictable into the category of people who took an honest accounting of their vulnerability and addressed it with direct, practical, affordable action. That distinction between the people who knew and prepared versus the people who knew and didn't is the most important variable in any survival scenario. You now know more about vehicle-based survival readiness than 97% of people who have ever thought about this topic. That is your operational advantage. That advantage is only real if you act on it. The single action to take this week, not this month, not eventually, is to open your car right now and ask yourself honestly, if I had to leave tonight, what would stop me? Comment that answer below. Not what you've already prepared. What would stop you? The most honest, specific answer gets pinned and a direct response. Think hard. The gap between you and the answer to that question is exactly the distance between where your preparation is and where it needs to be. Hit the bell. Not because it helps this channel, but because when the next piece of this blueprint drops, the window for implementation may be significantly shorter than the window available right now. Share this with one person in your life who would drive away unprepared, not for the views. For them, stay mission ready, stay invisible, or stay comfortable. You have already seen where comfortable leads.